I said she put Lauren.
Oh, but I have a chair.
As you can see, we're trying to fit as many people in here as possible. If you have a seat next to you, could you raise your hand? And we can't save seats, so you can get that off. Yeah. Okay, so there's one, there's two, yeah? I feel like we could auction them off, you know? Okay, there's 1, 2. Okay, and there's one here. It's leave it in 20 minutes.
Right here. Okay. He has a seat, yeah. There's one over there. One. Straight there to the left.
Okay, well, we're saving those two.
Yes, she's going to find that.
Welcome, everybody.
This is for Anna.
Okay. I'm Elizabeth Donahue. I'm the Associate Dean here for Public Affairs. And as you can see from today's response, we're very excited to have our visitor here, Ana Navarro. So we started our efforts to bring in Ms. Navarro last spring. At that point, Donald Trump was not the presidential-elect. He, however, was emerging as the party's nominee, and Ms. Navarro was a prominent commentator on the Republican primaries and other political issues. So we envisioned at that point that she would come as a prominent Republican voice and help us unpack the Republican primaries, debrief about the election and talk about the future of the GOP. So fast forward, polls notwithstanding, Mr. Trump won. And so as a frequent commentator for CNN, ABC News, and Telemundo, Ana created a stir when, as a Republican, she took a very strong stand against Mr. Trump during the campaign. She continues to raise important questions as he prepares to govern. And so we're very glad that she's here today to offer us some insights into what we may expect in the coming months and years. Ana served as the national co-chair of the Hispanic Advisory Council for the 2008 presidential campaign of Senator John McCain. She also served as national Hispanic co-chair for the 2012 presidential campaign of Governor Huntsman, who we have had here as a leadership visitor as well. In 1998, Ana was director of immigration policy in the executive office of Governor Jeb Bush. And in 2001, she was ambassador to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights in Geneva, Switzerland, where she was part of the effort to condemn the Cuban government for human rights violations. In the private sector, she's represented clients on issues related to immigration, trade policy affecting Central America. So her visit here is as part of our Leadership Through Mentorship program. It's a wonderful program that we have thanks to alumni donors. We bring leaders from various sectors into the school for 3 solid days. They immerse themselves in classes with meals with students. They have office hours. I think they limp out of here at the end. So we're very grateful for the energy and time that you have brought to the school. And they give a public talk while they're here. So without further ado, welcome Ana Navarro.
So yeah, I thought I was coming to Princeton to relax after the election. And they have worked me, well, not to the bone, as you can see, but pretty close to it. And I want to sincerely thank the people of Princeton, New Jersey, for having such beautiful weather for me the entire time I'm here. It's only the nicest time of year in Miami, so it's really made the visit here memorable. I really am happy to be here. I spent some time, and I've often spoken to students, and I find it invigorating. I find it a way to recharge batteries, because it's the young people today who are going to make the difference and who feel they can still make a difference. I'm jaded and I'm beat up. Like Elizabeth said, I worked for Huntsman, McCain, and Jeb Bush. In other words, every losing campaign the last 12 years. So if I wanted Donald Trump to lose, what I should have done is gone and worked for him. But I'm not going to work for him now. Before I begin, let me tell you, I'm not a journalist. I'm a commentator. I'm amazed, so you should not expect anything close to objectivity from me. If you came here to hear an objective analysis, the exit sign is right there. I'm a commentator, and what that means is I get to say whatever the hell I want. A lot of times I even get paid for it. I'm not here to speak for all Republicans. Unless Ronald Reagan came back from the dead, and maybe not even him after this last election, I don't think anybody could claim to do that. I'm not here to speak for all Hispanics. I'm here to share my thoughts, my views, my experiences. And if you're a Trump supporter, I respect you. We all have a right to make our own choices. I warn you, you may not like what I have to say, and put any sharp objects down, please. I'm going to talk to you about the 2016 election, or as I call it, the debacle. The Republican Party started this race with some of our best stallions we had in our stable. And somehow, we ended up with our horses. I'm sorry. I meant to say Donald Trump. We started with the most diverse field we ever had. 2 Hispanics, and okay, bear with me, I'm counting Ted Cruz as a Hispanic. I understand he came to Princeton, so you guys bear some fault in this too. We had a Spanish-speaking Bush, an African-American, a woman, and we ended up with Trump. We started out with 4 Floridians, a Texan, a Canadian, and we ended up with a really rich New Yorker. Make that 2 really rich New Yorkers running for president. One by one, Trump vanquished 16 other opponents. He beat candidates who were better prepared, better funded, veteran campaigners, had better campaigns, and spent more money. He deserves credit for that. While everybody else had their heads in the clouds and were playing a political game that ceased to exist in 2008, Trump was attuned to the difference, to what had happened, the change, the transformation in the Republican base. He was able to sense it and tap into it, and into the very legitimate and real anger that existed in parts of America in 2016. People are mad at the dysfunction. People are mad at Washington. People are fed up with the status quo. People are frustrated with the political correctness to the point of temerity. And they're looking for someone who reflects those feelings. Trump saw it, sensed it, and did it. Donald Trump was what I call the perfect storm of a candidate. Maybe we can even call him a Category 5. He had money. He was able to finance his campaign those first few months when nobody would have given him a penny. He had media savvy. That man knows how to market himself. He knows how to play us like a fiddle. He knows how to distract us, how to make us chase shiny objects that he throws in front of us because he's entertaining. He's good for ratings. He can get his point across in 140 characters. He had 100% name ID. He came into this out of left field, or maybe right field, with 100% name ID. He had celebrity status. What does that mean? It means he got judged not as a mortal politician, he got judged as a celebrity. He got judged as the jerk host of The Apprentice we all came to know. Meant he got away with saying and doing things that would have killed any other candidate, would have killed any other campaign. He was running against 16 others. There was a trampling over each other. There was a trampling over each other's messages. They were competing for small fractions of the vote, whereas Trump had a clear lane for himself. And he had the ability to tap into the frustration and anger of the American people while a lot of other people were just, singing nursery rhymes to the Republican base. It didn't work. It worked for Trump. My friend Jeb Bush, who I supported, and I should say in this race, in the Republican primary, I supported Jeb Bush, I supported Chris Christie, I supported Marco Rubio, I supported John Kasich, I supported Ted Cruz, then I went back to supporting John Kasich. I basically supported the potted plant before I supported Donald Trump. And my friend Jeb Bush, who I have been dying for him to run for as long as I can remember, he went into those debates to discuss policy. But when Trump turned his guns on him, he made Jeb look like a hippie flower child wearing beads around his neck, a crown of daisies on his head, and singing Kumbaya. And one by one, Trump branded, mocked, attacked, and brought down all of his opponents. When Trump launched his campaign, most of us laughed. Most of us laughed at him. We didn't think he was going to run. We didn't think he was going to last. We thought he would get bored. We didn't think he was going to win primaries. Well, 18 months later, nobody's laughing. Let me introduce you to President-elect Donald Trump. In the event you don't watch cable news or maybe have been living in the International Space Station for the last year and a half, and I know I've been very subtle about it till now, so let me just be clear. I never supported Donald Trump. I do not support Donald Trump. And as I said on TV many times, unless the Virgin Mary had appeared to me on a piece of toast, I was not ever going to vote for Donald Trump. It meant that I avoided bread for about 3 months, but I made it up with chocolate and alcohol. This presidential election ended up being the first time in my life I voted for the Democrat. And why didn't I support Donald Trump? Why didn't I support the Republican nominee for the first time in my life? Well, let me just list the ways. Because I'm an immigrant, and he attacked immigrants. Because I'm a Hispanic, and he attacked Hispanics. Because I'm a woman, and he attacked women. Because I'm a Catholic, a very imperfect one. I'm the type of Catholic that if I go to church, into a church, you better stay away because lightning will probably strike and kill us all. But I respect my faith. I respect communion, and I expect my president to do so as well, not to laugh at the little wine and the little wafer. I didn't support him because I'm a friend of John McCain's and have seen the physical and emotional scars he bears from savage torture for 5 years. And I respect POWs. Donald Trump said POWs were losers and that John McCain was not a hero. This is the same Donald Trump who dodged the draft 4 times because he had a foot spur. Of course, he doesn't remember which foot, which may explain his need to put his foot in his mouth. Because I'm the sister of a disabled man, and I'm disgusted by grown adults who mock the disabled. Donald Trump mocked a disabled reporter. Because like Mr. and Mrs. Khan, my mother and father buried their son, my brother. He was not a soldier. He didn't die in action. He died in his bed of a heart attack. But I do know that losing a son, the sacrifice of losing a son, the sadness, the pain of losing a son, no, it does not compare in any way to the sacrifice of building a building. I cannot comprehend how the first reaction towards a Gold Star family, even if they are saying bad things about you, is not to simply say thank you, thank you, thank you for your sacrifice, and I am so very sorry for your loss. I just can't understand that, not being the first reaction. I didn't support Donald Trump because I could not accept a political leader who questions the ability of a U.S. citizen, an Indiana-born judge, to do his job because his parents happen to have been born in Mexico. Or someone whose first reaction upon learning that a 32-year-old mother, Dwayne Wade's cousin, was shot in the head while pushing her baby stroller down a street in Chicago, and his first reaction is to send an "I told you so" tweet, vote Trump. Or someone who publicly humiliated a woman, a beauty queen, because she gained some weight, called her Miss Piggy. Does Donald Trump own a mirror? I just couldn't do it. At the end of the day, I needed to be able to look at myself in the mirror. I needed to be able to live with my conscience. So you might be sitting there right now wondering, why the hell is this woman still a Republican? It's a question I get asked all the time these days. I'm a Republican because of Ronald Reagan. I fled communism. He fought and defeated communism, and I am grateful to him eternally for that. I was born in Nicaragua. I fled the communist revolution in 1980. I'm a Republican because of leaders like Paul Ryan, who show compassion and common sense and are willing to address issues like poverty and justice reform. I'm a Republican because I believe in strengthening institutions of faith and strengthening families, all families, white, black, brown, and rainbow-colored ones too. I'm a Republican because I believe this country is better when we have 2 strong parties debating ideas and proposals and solutions. I am a Republican because I think our states, our cities, Hispanics, African Americans, every single American are much better off when 2 parties are actually competing for our vote, as opposed to having one that takes us for granted and another one that ignores us completely. I'm a Republican because I've been a Republican since I was 8 years old. Habits die hard. I was a Republican before Donald Trump was a Republican. I was a Republican when Donald Trump was a Democrat. I was a Republican when Donald Trump was an independent. I am a Republican now, and I will remain a Republican. I'm a Republican because too many people have worked too long and too hard to make it a more inclusive party. People like George W. Bush, like Jeb Bush, like John McCain, like Lindsey Graham, like Lincoln Diaz-Balart, like Mario Diaz-Balart. I am not going to leave them alone. I'm not going to abandon ship and let this fight go on without me. I'm a Republican because I don't know whether it's going to be in 4 years or 8 years or 12 years or when, but we need to rebuild this party. We need 2 strong parties competing in America. And I want to be part of that rebuilding effort. I want to do it from inside the tent. I begrudgingly accept that Donald Trump is now the titular head of the Republican Party. I do not accept that Donald Trump represents my Republican values. I was at the Trump convention, and I call it that instead of the Republican convention because, frankly, most Republicans I know weren't there. It's the first time I can remember not one of the federally elected Hispanic members from Florida attended the convention. To be more accurate, Marco Rubio did make a hostage video, but but I got up to clear my throat from the TV set, and I missed it. And Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, Carlos Curbelo, Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Layton, they all opted to stay home. I think that was the week they all had to color organize their closets. Rob Portman, the host senator from Ohio, John Kasich, the host governor from Ohio, they didn't set foot in the place. I think organizers of the convention filed a missing persons report for Portman and Kasich. John McCain, he went to hike the Grand Canyon during the convention. Kelly Ayotte, Jeff Flake, I could go on and on and on and on. It was a long list of Republican senators and congresspeople and luminaries who did not attend. Ted Cruz showed up. Ted Cruz showed up to Trump's party. He danced to the music, he ate the food, he drank the booze, and then he pissed all over the carpet. Of course, that was before he wanted to be Supreme Court Justice under Trump. That man's gone through so many reinventions of his own. I mean, Ted Cruz has reinvented himself more times in the last year than Madonna. Again, I think Princeton has an explanation to give regarding him. Now, let me tell you something else. Hillary Clinton, too, was a very flawed candidate. Democrats managed to nominate practically the only candidate who could have lost against Donald Trump. It was very hard for me to vote for Hillary Clinton. I struggled with it for weeks. I pulled petals off a daisy. I talked to friends. I drank heavily. I thought about it some more. I drank some more. I didn't want to do this. Maybe it's maybe it's the romantic Latina in me. Maybe I watch way too many telenovelas. I still want to be courted. I still want to fall in love. I still want to vote for someone I believe in, someone who inspires me to be better, someone who unites our country and brings out the best in us. I just, she didn't fill my love tank. I didn't want to run into her arms just because she wasn't him. I ended up doing that. It was called panic. I think Donald Trump brought out the worst in us. He fanned our fears, he stoked our anger, he promoted our divisions. Under the guise of not being politically correct, he was often crass and vulgar and hostile. And Hillary Clinton, she didn't for donors and conflicts of interest. I was obviously not alone in this. It's the reason the majority of Americans found her untrustworthy. That's the word that most came up when you got asked about Hillary Clinton. And it was a constant drip, drip, drip for 18 months that never stopped. She never managed to plug that leak. I think it was a lesson, a life lesson. You've got to address problems early. You've got to see them head on. You've got to acknowledge them as big problems, not try to sweep them under the rug because they will not go away. The crescendo, the last 3-4 weeks of the campaign were lethal for her. WikiLeaks, the Russians, Podesta's emails, the Comey letter were just the last nail in the coffin. I mean, this 2016, you couldn't make this up. I don't know how much LSD you would have to consume to dream up the 2016 election. Who would have thunk that this election might have been decided by a sex scandal that did not include Bill Clinton? It was actually Anthony Weiner's wiener that got her into trouble. And let me say this for the students in the room. I think what happened there with Weiner and Huma is a learning moment. Ladies, let me tell you from experience, you can't fix a man after the age of 18. If he's sexting once, if he's sexting twice, God knows I've tried. Hindsight is 2020. There are countless reasons why she lost. There are countless things she could have done differently. We could spend the next 4 years obsessing about the what-ifs. At the end of the day, she could not coast to victory just counting on a backlash vote because she happened to be running against an insane man. Complacency was one of Hillary Clinton's biggest enemies. Her campaign believed the polls. Worse yet, voters relied on and believed the polls and thought they could either not vote or cast a symbolic vote for a third-party candidate because she had it in the bag. She didn't. The polls were wrong. Another learning moment, I think, for all of us in America. You get no do-overs in elections. This is not golf. You get one chance, one shot at it, one bite at the apple, and we must vote on election day because we might regret what happens the next day. This was a historical first, not only because Hillary Clinton was the first woman nominee. I do think that means something, and we should reflect on that. And I know some women are discouraged and think that she lost because she was a woman. I don't agree with that. And I think it's an achievement that we got the first nominee to run for president, come very close, win the popular vote. It's an achievement that should not be underestimated. It's an achievement that needs to be recognized. She didn't win the presidency, but by God, it is a hell of an accomplishment. Just over 100 years ago, we didn't have the right to vote. And in 2016, one of us got to compete for the big ring. I think that in my lifetime, we will see another woman nominee, maybe a woman president. Maybe she's a Princeton student and sitting among us today. This was, 2016 was also a historical first because it was the first time when both nominees had disapproval ratings over 50%. Most Americans didn't like either. That included me. America deserves better. You know, it was probably also a historical first because I think we had the first woman president, and I think we had the first orange candidate. Anyway, bad Anna. America deserves better than what we got in this race. We spent more time discussing coughing fits than we did discussing energy policy. We spent more time discussing that unidentifiable furry object that grows on top of Donald Trump's head than we did discussing how to defeat ISIS. We spent more time discussing pictures of Melania and the newest episode of Anthony Weiner's texting than we did discussing water policy. This presidential election was full of personal insults, devoid of substance, and often devoid of facts. I can tell you every single nickname with which Donald Trump branded his opponents. Low energy Jeb, little Marco, lying Ted, crooked Hillary. But I can't tell you what his higher education proposal is. I think the disaster that was this presidential election makes the role of Congress that much more important now. We ended up with a president-elect who half of America, maybe even more, thinks is crazy, erratic, and hateful. The only way to check and balance him is a House and a Senate that knows what they are doing and is willing to work with him to improve lives of Americans, but is also not afraid to stand up to the president, even if he is from the same party, when he is violating rights, when he is acting absolutely erratically. The Chinese give their years names. The year of the dog, the year of the lion, the year of the monkey. Well, 2016, for me, was the year of the crazy, the year of the unexpected and the unpredictable. Anything could happen, and anything did happen. I was rereading some stuff I wrote, and about 2 months before the election, I was giving a speech, and I found this in one of the speeches from about 2 months before the election. If I were a Democrat, this was when Hillary was winning by double digits. If I were a Democrat, I would not be sleeping soundly right now. There are external factors that could deeply affect this race. What if the Russians or the Chinese or the Martians or whomever hacked her emails and released them in late October? And what if those emails show more routines or conversations about flowers or Chelsea's wedding? Well, I didn't think it was going to be Podesta's emails. I didn't think it was going to be Anthony Weiner's texts. I didn't think it was going to be Comey's letter. But there were external factors that deeply affected the outcome of this election. So we are where we are. Where does that leave us? It leaves us with a president that a good portion of America thinks can do no wrong. They will defend and justify and applaud anything he does. And the other half of America thinks is just plain wrong. It leaves us feeling uncertain with a president that we don't quite know what he's going to do, how he's going to act as president. He's never been in elected office before, and that man has held more positions than the Kama Sutra. It leaves us with the ugliest underbelly of America exposed and emboldened. Trump did not invent racism. We cannot claim, we cannot accuse him, we cannot blame him for racism. But he did promote it. He allowed it. he peddled it, he pandered to it. I have mutual friends with Trump, some, and they would call me and give me hell every now and then when I called them a racist, bigoted, sexist, misogynist, orange pig on TV. They assured me he was none of those things. Well, maybe not the orange part. They said he was just playing it up for the crowd. Well, if I wanted to vote for someone that was pretending to be a racist, misogynist, sexist, bigoted pig, why not just vote for Archie Bunker? Here's where I land on this. If you're not racist, you don't play racist. You don't play with it. You don't pretend it. It offends you. It happening around you offends you. You don't allow it. He allowed it. The bottom line is, whether he admits it or not, Donald Trump unleashed the Kraken in America. He unleashed racism, sexism, vulgarity, name-calling, division, hostility. Americans who espouse those beliefs used to be embarrassed to be racist. It used to be a bad thing. It would cost you jobs. It would cost you friends. It would bring you shame. If you were a racist, you were a racist inside the four walls of your house, and you did it under your bed. I saw people holding racist signs at Donald Trump rallies. Racist and proud. I saw people screaming, Jew-SA. I saw things that just sent chills down my spine, because it's not the America we know. It's not the America we love. It's not the America we've built. It is not a coincidence that hate crimes have spiked up exponentially since this election. It is not a coincidence that Muslim women are having the scarves torn off their heads since this election. It is not a coincidence that people are harassing Latino students and telling them to go back to Mexico. He unleashed it, and it's now his responsibility to do every single thing he can to make it better, because he's going to have a very hard time governing a country that is this divided and this angry, and where there is this much racial division and hostility. If you put a gun to my head and ask me to come up with a silver lining to Trump's election, and only if you put a gun to my head, I will tell you it is that he has forced us to see and acknowledge our divisions. It has laid them bare for the whole world to see. We cannot continue sweeping them under the rug. We must address them, or they will get worse. And I think there is individual responsibility in all of us as individuals, to try to do our part to make these divisions less of a problem in America. We need to be a less polarized country. So what now? As a Trump opponent and critic, what now? I disdain Trump and everything he represents as much today as I did a month ago. I do not believe in conversions at 70 years of age. But I also know that I deeply respect the presidency of the United States. I respect the office that's been held by the likes of Washington and Lincoln. I don't like it one bit that his portrait's going to be hanging among them. I don't like it one bit, but I can't deny it. Donald Trump is now my president-elect. I must be the kind of person we saw him be as a candidate. We must speak up. We must stand up. We must confront him. We have a First Amendment right to free speech and freedom of thought, freedom of assembly, even if it means going against our president. It's what makes us different from so many other countries. It is our right. And if Donald Trump is threatening the fiber of America and our way of life, it is also our duty. Before I conclude, I want to touch on two more issues and then open it up to questions. You can ask me anything you want. I want to touch two more issues. I want to talk to the victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment who may be out there in the audience or watching. I know many women, many victims of sexual assault, see his victory as a blow to them. Don't. He may be president, but we all know what he is and what he did. This was also the year where, after decades of getting away with it, powerful men like Bill Cosby, like Roger Ailes, paid the price for their actions. Women found their voice and the courage to denounce them, to tell their stories, to point fingers at the perpetrators. And we must continue confronting sexual abuse and sexual harassment. No woman should feel shame or embarrassment. Instead, we must shame and embarrass the perpetrators. Do not look at the Trump victory as a reason to be afraid or silent. See it as motivation to speak up and demand better. Lastly, I want to speak to any students who may be here or may be watching, who are undocumented or have undocumented friends or family, any student who might be under DACA, any students who may be Muslims. I know you're worried. I know you're afraid of what may happen, of life under a Trump administration. I know you're afraid for the safety of your families, for the unity of your families, and for your future. I know that you're afraid that there may be no room for you in America 2016. Do not be afraid. Share your stories. Be involved. Get engaged. Put names and faces to your experiences. Your stories of success, of perseverance, of loving America is your best defense. And I give you my word, talking specifically to those undocumented students, I give you my word. I make a personal promise to you. I will not let you be alone. I will use every platform available to me to demand that you are treated fairly and with respect, with dignity and compassion. I will stand with you. The American people will stand with you. Thank you very much. Take this off because I feel like a rotisserie chicken. Like my friend Marco Rubio, I need a little water.
So we have two microphones here. I encourage you to come down. I encourage students to come down. We give you preference. If you're a member of the media and you're going to ask a question, please identify yourself as such. So come on down.
And I will answer any question except if you ask me about my weight.
If even more in person, I don't mean that in a sexist way or anything.
I'm schwitzing here. This thing is like a rotisserie.
Adam Bierman, Princeton TV. Just to get local, then I'm going to record it. Do you have any comment on the New York Times coverage of the election? And is it true that you called Mayor Bill de Blasio a Sandinista?
Maybe it was a Sandinista. Well, listen, he did. It happens. Mayor de Blasio is a little to the left of where of my comfort zone. So is Justin Trudeau. I think that people who defend dictators, whether it's on the right or the left, lose legitimacy. I think people who offer condolences to the family of Fidel Castro but don't offer condolences to the families of all those who died in his firing squad lose legitimacy. You can't fight for voting rights here. You can't fight against suppression of voting rights in the United States and at the same time condone it for 57 years in Cuba. So I think if we're going to call out human rights abuses, I think if we're going to call out those who suppress democracy and voting rights, I think we need to do it despite of ideology, despite of who it may be. I think you need to be consistent about it. No.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to point out that we have a hashtag. We're very modern here. So you can tweet from the audience, but for those, we're live streaming this, and some people are downstairs in Bowl 16. If you have a question, please tweet it, and we will alter some Twitter questions with your.
Hi, my name is Richard Gagliardi, and I'm a grad student in politics here. I was wondering what you think the probability is that the Republican Party will be able to win back many of the people that have been alienated by Trump in this election, and what you think the odds are that they can successfully rebuild around moderate candidates and candidates that are less offensive, like Paul Ryan or so forth.
I don't know what in the short term what's going to happen because Donald Trump is going to be basically running the RNC. He is, as I said, the titular head of the Republican Party. He's the symbolic head of the Republican Party right now. I do think that there are voices in Congress, there are people in Congress, leaders in Congress, who, if he goes back to being what we've seen him be the last 18 months as a candidate, will stand up to him and will defend what they know is right. I think that the people, there's no doubt that Donald Trump's election was a blow to those of us like me who've been arguing for so long that you needed to be more inclusive, that you needed to go out into the Latino community, into the African American community, into the Asian community, into the, you know, it's been a blow because he didn't do those things. In fact, he did worse than that. Many times he antagonized those groups, and yet he won. But I also know that demographics are not going back; they're going forward. And maybe it wasn't this year, but certainly in years to come, it's going to get harder and harder to win national office without becoming a more inclusive party. I would say the same thing to the Democrats in the fact that they have to become more inclusive of voices outside of urban America. Frankly, I think what we need is a voter relocation program.
Thank you for being here. My name is Matthew Richardson. I'm a graduate student here at the Woodrow Wilson School, and I'm kind of known in my program as the Republican. And it's interesting.
I met a second Republican yesterday. In fact, he even called himself conservative. And he was from Seattle, Washington. I told him he was confused.
I know that as I've been here, I've had opportunities to engage with classmates who have different perspectives than mine, and it's helped me see different viewpoints or see motivations that are behind those viewpoints. And I didn't know, as you've been engaging with students in classrooms in different settings, is there any points that have been made or questions you've received that have informed or altered your perspective on some issues that have been discussed?
I spent some time asking students today to explain the appeal of Bernie Sanders because, to millennials, and to explain to me why Hillary Clinton did not appeal to millennials. So it's, we older people keep giving our own theories on that, so it was actually good to ask millennials about millennials' opinions as opposed to asking 50-year-olds to explain millennials. I'm glad that you brought up the point of diversity of thought and, sharing with people who think differently than you do. One of the great joys in my life is to have friends who I can argue with. Sometimes they take it a little overboard, but I think one of the biggest problems we've got in America today is social and political isolation. If you want to live in the basement of your mother's house, in your pajamas, working out of your computer, ordering in food, and playing virtual reality games all day, you can. You can be isolated from society. And you can also be isolated politically. If you choose, because of blogs, because of cable networks, because of talk radio, you can just listen to things that you agree with, watch only things that you agree with, hang out with people only that you agree with. And I think we've lost the appreciation for diversity of thought, for diversity of experience, for understanding each other. It has led to an increasingly polarized American society, and that is a very big problem. So, I tell folks, go meet people that are different than you. Go spend time with people that are different than you, that grew up in a different place, grew up differently, grew up in a different social class. It's what makes America, that's what makes America great. The fact that we can all come from different places, we can all come from different experiences, we can all bring different things to the table, but at the end of the day, we all love this country and we would all defend it to the death. So I'm glad that you're doing that, and you got a lot of work to do here as the only Republican. Where are you from?
My name is Lu Chen. I'm a sophomore in the music department, so I got lost and wandered in on here. But I'm a big fan, and I had a question regarding Mitt Romney. As you know, Mitt Romney was one of Trump's most vocal opponents in the very beginning. He was one of the original Never Trumpers, along with Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska. But as you know, in recent days, Romney has kind of come forth as a potential candidate for Secretary of State. And indeed, there was a picture that surfaced on Twitter, a terrifying picture of Romney eating a meal, breaking bread with Trump. And so my question for you
Frog
as some-
legs, nonetheless.
Exactly.
I was sure he was going to get served crow. Slowly roasted.
But as someone who knows Romney well and who indeed counts him as one of your friends, do you believe that Romney reaching out to Trump in recent days is just a move of flagrant political opportunism, an opportunity for Romney to reinvigorate his political career, or do you believe Romney's doing this to kind of keep Trump in check and to sacrifice himself on the altar of American unity? And the same thing kind of goes for people like Nikki.
Are you in the music school or the theater school? Because you are very dramatic.
Thank you. But yeah, and the same goes for people like Nikki Haley and who condemned Trump during the primary and even during the general election, but are now kind of coming forth to play a role in his administration.
Well, look, I do know Mitt Romney. I think it's somewhat of an act of masochism, but it's mostly an act of patriotism. I know it may sound corny, but Mitt Romney loves his country, and Mitt Romney wants to serve his country. He's got a vocation of service. I also think that Mitt Romney comes from a place where when the President of the United States calls you to serve, you do. You offer yourself up for service. I think Mitt Romney understands the role, understands loyalty, understands that it's President Trump and that he would be under the chain of command of a President Trump. And if he's putting himself out there, it's because he's willing to do it. As a friend of Mitt Romney, and I respect Mitt a lot, I like Mitt a lot, part of me would like for him not to do it because I just think, it can be painful. And I'm worried that people around Trump who don't want him to be Secretary of State might try to sabotage him. As an American citizen who loves her country, I want him to do it because I know he's qualified. I know he's a decent man. I know he has management skills. I know he's got gravitas. I know he understands foreign policy. I know he's qualified for the job. So, I'm sympathetic to Mitt, but I'm also grateful to Mitt. I don't think it's an act of political opportunism. Mitt knows he's at the end of his political career. Mitt has all the money in the world. Mitt has all the opportunities in the world. Mitt has 253 grandchildren. Mitt does not need this to be fulfilled or be happy. He has a pretty damn good life. I think it's really about a commitment to service, a vocation to service, and love for the country and wanting to contribute in whatever way he can. Thank you. Nikki Haley, by the way, I get less than I get the Mitt part because Nikki does have a political future. She's one of the bright rising stars of the Republican Party. And so I think it's a much bigger risk for her than it is for Mitt.
My name is Christian Martin. I'm a sophomore at the high school, actually. And I've grown up in Princeton. I've always been slightly conservative for such a liberal town. And so I was curious back to when you were discussing the rebuilding of the Republican Party. As a moderate conservative, what do you think are kind of the next steps to take to jumpstart that rebuilding? Because I agree, I think it becomes a lot harder when we have a victory of this more Trumpian conservatism than the more moderate conservatism. But kind of where do we go from here, basically?
I don't know where we go from here quite yet. If Trump had lost, I think there'd be a number of Republican leaders who would have stepped up already with proposals and with messages of inclusion and with a plan of action. I think you would have seen people like Mitt Romney, like Lindsey Graham, like John McCain, like Jeb Bush, like George W. Bush come out and try to unite the party and make it a bigger tent. I think a lot of it depends on what kind of president Donald Trump turns out to be. And right now, we just don't know what kind of president he turns out to be. Maybe he surprises us all, and has some, levitates and has a lobotomy. And, maybe he surprises us all and becomes that unifying, healing Republican president. I'm Catholic. I'm supposed to believe in miracles. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sierra Corbet. I am a senior in the Wilson School, and I'm writing my thesis on political communications and what that's looked like in this past election. I noticed that you said we spent more time listening about Hillary Clinton's coughing, Trump's coughing and whatever's growing on his head than the real...
That was Hillary who coughed.
Oh, okay. Hillary's coughing, Trump's hair. But we heard more about those issues than the real policy issues that I would say are pretty important to making our choice of the next president. So what do you think that the media can do better in terms of kind of giving voters what they need to know to make their choices in a time when so many people distrust the media and are maybe looking for something more sensational or more emotional or less really content-driven?
You see, so people always ask that, right? What can the media do more? Why isn't the media being serious? Why is the media talking about the size of Donald Trump's hands? Why is the media? But so let me tell you a story. When remember the Malaysian plane that disappeared, and CNN carried the Malaysian plane disappearance for a month and a half. Black hole theories and things like that. I'd go out, and every time I went out in public, I would get accosted by people who were so very angry that CNN was covering this for a month and a half. But CNN's ratings went up 1,000+% during that time. That's why they covered it for a month and a half. So I think there's individual responsibility for consumers to assume of how we consume and what we watch and what we want to watch. I do think this was a very unique election. I think Donald Trump made it a very unique election. Had he not been a candidate in the Republican primary, those debates would have been much more substantive. It would have been a policy-oriented debate. Had he not been the general election candidate, I mean, do you have any doubt that if it had been a Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush campaign, we would have not gone deep in the weeds on policy issues? We might have all, gone into a boredom-induced coma, but they would have most definitely debated policy, and it would have been substance-heavy. So I think what you saw, I hope what you saw, this election is a unique case, and it's, in response to the Donald Trump candidacy. We had an entertainer. We had a TV host and entertainer running for president, and I think he changed the entire dynamic. I don't think anybody else can get away with it, with not discussing policy and instead, making jokes about Rosie O'Donnell or this or that, or nobody else could get away with it. I hope. So I think you're going to see it go back to a policy-driven debate post-Trump.
My name is Fred Weinberg. Donald Trump did what he does best, which is self-promotion, and he was very good at that. You've just used the phrase "a unique election." However, when I look at the electoral map, the popular vote, and really a state-by-state look, it seems to me that the last 5 elections, going back to 2000, I don't really see a difference. So was there really a difference with Trump? If you look at it, we're really 2 countries. There's the East Coast, the West Coast, and the cities, and everything else is red. So was there really a change besides simply the entertainer able to get, slightly more electoral votes than Hillary Clinton?
Oh, I think there was a change. I think there was a different tone to this election. I think there was, I think there was a going down into the gutter in this election. I think there was a lack of substance to this election that was different from 2008, from 2012. I think we saw, whereas, in 2004, the gay issue was a wedge issue, race, ethnicity, immigration were wedge issues in a big way in this election. I think we saw a difference in turnout. Part of it wasn't Trump. Part of it was lack of enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton. Had she gotten the same turnout as President Obama in '08 or even in '12, she would probably be President-elect Clinton today. So I do think that there was. I think every election is unique because there's so many different factors. I think it was different because the Russians were involved. You know.
It's all true, but what I'm asking is that, I accept the unique components that you're mentioning, but if you go look at, say, West Virginia or Kentucky, right, and look over the years, they vote 70-30 Republican, and were there different voters? It seems to me that you got the same.
There was different turnout. I mean, Ohio went for Trump. Florida went for Trump. They had all been Democrat states, so we're
talking about one percentage point. We're not saying.
Okay, but 1 percentage point matters in an election this close. You're asking me if I think it was different. I do think it was different. I think that when so many swing states that went for Obama went for Trump this time, I think there's a difference in what happened. Were the voters different? The turnout was different. There was a much bigger turnout in rural America than there had been in 2008, 2012. There was less of an African-American turnout, so turnout was different.
Okay, so we have a Twitter question. Thank you. Did the media inflate Hillary Clinton's faults because she's a woman? That's my question.
I really don't think so. Hillary Clinton didn't set up a private server, which then went on to cause her so many problems in the election because she was a woman. She set up a private server because she was slightly paranoid. Hillary Clinton, I don't think the Comey letter was because she was a woman. I don't think the information that came out because of the Wiener sexting was because she was a woman. I don't think that the blurred lines, I don't think people being troubled by the speeches to Wall Street, and I'm talking among Democrats, things that made them lack the enthusiasm to come out was because she was a woman. So I don't think the media or Americans, I don't think this decision was this was decided because she was a woman. There are people who may not have voted for her, certainly, because she was a woman, but there's also people who voted for her because of the historical significance of her being the first woman. I would say the same thing about President Obama. I think there's people who didn't support him, didn't vote for him because he was black. But I think there's also people who did support him and did vote for him because he was black and that historical significance. So I don't think we can blame it on gender. I think we have got to look at Hillary Clinton's flaws. Look, if I were a Democrat, I'd be very angry at the Clintons, frankly. We all knew 8 years ago Hillary Clinton was going to run for president again. They knew. She and Bill knew 8 years ago she was going to run for president again. Nobody better than the Clintons know the scrutiny that comes with running for president and with being a Clinton. They needed to have behaved like saints. They needed to have behaved in an impeccable way. Instead, they chased every dollar that came in front of them, whether it was for private consulting, whether it was for paid speeches, whether it was for the foundation. And they knew the scrutiny that was going to come with it and the problems that it was going to lead to. I keep thinking the Clintons suffer from financial anorexia. They look at themselves in the mirror and they still think they're poor. They're not. They could have behaved in a different way in the last 8 years. She came into this race with a lot of unnecessary baggage that I think chipped away at her trustworthiness, and I think reemphasized the narrative of corruption that so many people already felt out there.
So you mentioned that one of the reasons you're still a Republican is because you want to be there to help rebuild the party after this election because of the importance of the two-party system. Do you think that the historic lack of elected power with the Democratic Party right now is going to cause problems for our democracy, or do you think that in the midterm of the next election, that power balance is going to kind of be rebalanced?
Ask me that again?
Okay, sorry. So you said that the two-party system is one of the
Right.
fundamental parts of our democracy. Do you think the fact that the Democratic Party, being so weak as it is really threatening our democracy? Or do you think that at the next election or the midterm or the presidential election, the balance of power in, say, Congress and state houses is going to come back to kind of an equilibrium where we're going to see the type of dialogue that we need for a democracy?
Look, I really think what we see in the next election in 2 years is going to depend on what we see from President Trump and the Republican Congress these next 2 years. In 2010, the Tea Party and the boom on Republican voters was very much a backlash and a result to Republicans feeling that the Democratic president and the Democratic Congress had gone overboard in acting unilaterally on things like Obamacare, the ACA. So I think that if Republicans do the same thing, you might see the same type of backlash on the Democratic side. But I also think Democrats need to get their house together. We had a lot of conversation about establishment versus base on the Republican side, and I tell you the same exact thing was happening on the Democratic side. Establishment versus base. And the Democrats nominated the establishment candidate, and she lost. And now you're seeing, I think, the strengthening. If you tell me who benefited from Hillary Clinton's loss, I'd tell you it's Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Their voice is louder and more relevant today than it was had she won, and than it was during the general election. If Keith Ellison or some progressive gets picked as the chair of the DNC, we're going to see that even further. So I think, but then you see things like, Nancy Pelosi getting reelected for the upteenth time as a minority leader, and you have to wonder how could they not possibly have gotten the message that Democrats also want to change.
Anna, my name's Jim Golden. I live here in Princeton. Thank you for being here today. One of the things everything you talked about today certainly concerns me. I'd like to focus just for a second about sort of international affairs and how you envision a President Trump responding to international crises, how that's likely to play out, because that really concerns me. He strikes me as a guy with very, very thin skin and someone who always has to win, and that worries me in terms of how that may play out when the first crisis or the next crisis happens.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
We have no idea how he's going to react, right? I'm more likely to be able to tell you what he's going to tweet out than I am to tell you how he's going to react to an international crisis. He's never been in a position near that. He's never been privy to intel information. He frankly is not an expert on foreign policy. This is a guy who didn't know the difference between Cuds and Kurds. And so he's got a lot to learn. I think we're going to learn a lot of which way he's going to go when he names his Secretary of State, when he names his Secretary of Defense. But, what did he say in the campaign? I think, he's going more towards being a less proactive United States, a less involved United States, less nation building abroad, more nation building here. Those were things that resonated with a lot of people in the United States, and a promise he made. I think we're going to see probably an early indication of him on foreign policy regarding Cuba. He's got a chance, and he made big promises to the Cuban American community on reverting Cuba policy and the openings that Obama had made. He can actually do that because it was all done through executive order. No law was changed. So, we're going to get an early indication when he starts naming his foreign policy team, when he starts naming his defense team, and when we see what, if anything, he does regarding Cuba policy. Is he going to be more isolated? Is he going to be, more open? Is he going to keep the promises or not? Right now, your guess is as good as mine. I really can't read Trump leaves. I just can't, I don't understand them. That mind is just way too jumbled up for me. And we don't have anything to go on other than the stuff he said in the campaign, and he's already backtracked on some of that and, changed positions, and his tweets.
Thank you.
We have tweets. We have another one. Will the Republican majority who gave token statements against Trump's words but didn't condemn him, will they be an actual check on Trump?
Oh, I think that's an unfair characterization. I think there were, I certainly remember some very strong condemnation of Trump by John McCain, who unendorsed him. I certainly remember some very strong condemnation of Trump and his words against the Judge Curiel by Paul Ryan. Look, the reality is he's the president-elect, and everybody, including Democrats, should try to work with him on things that make sense for the United States of America. I think you're going to see if he puts out a proposal for infrastructure, that may be one where he gets bipartisan support. I don't think you're going to see the Republican Congress, some of the leaders in the Republican Congress be rubber stamps on things that they don't like, they don't condone, they don't accept. We saw John McCain, I think it was last week at an international conference, say, we're not going to waterboard. I don't give a damn what the president says and thinks. I think that's a clear indication from John McCain that no, he's not going to roll over and play dead. He's going to hold fast to his principles and his convictions, and he's going to confront Trump when those are in conflict.
We can go for about 10 more minutes, so we'll take these last 4 questions and then wrap up.
My name is Peter Cheka. I'm a first-year grad student in the physics department, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on some of the hostility towards science that has developed in certain factions of the Republican Party in recent years.
Gosh, I think Donald Trump is a Chinese hoax.
Is that something that worries you, or?
Well, as somebody who lives in Miami, yes, I'm worried about climate change. The other day there was an octopus. I'm not making this up. You can Google it. There was an octopus found floating in a Miami parking lot, parking garage that had, that was flooded during the super tides. There was an octopus, like a real octopus. This wasn't a fake octopus in a Miami garage. So, yes, I live in Miami. I am concerned about rising tides and climate change. I do live in the 55th floor, so I think I might be okay for now. Look, I think, first of all, it's not all Republicans who deny climate change, right? And I think this is going to continue to be, climate change has also become a wedge issue. When things become a wedge issue, oftentimes facts matter less because they become political issues. But I think as more people see the evidence in front of them, there's going to be more action. And I would say to Republicans, there's things that can be done to help the environment, to make it a better environment that won't kill off business. Why not do it? Why not try to leave a better world and earth and planet for future generations? So it does bother me that we are perceived as the anti-science party, and I think there's work to be done. But I think there's Republicans who clearly espouse different views and are worried about this. Become a Republican. It'll help. The problem, all you science people become Democrats.
Maybe there's a good reason for that, but other than that, whatever.
I'm telling you, voter relocation programs, that's what we need. If the people who don't believe in climate change move to Florida, they might change their mind.
Thank you.
Hi, Anna. I'm Gigi Goldman from the Princeton community. I am feeling like Donald Trump is working really hard right now to bring the media to heel, and I'm concerned about what that's going to mean in terms of accurate reporting. He's talked about not holding press conferences. He's talked about, preferential interviews. He's denigrated reporters. Has been really, asked people to apologize for things they've said. And I'm concerned that, similar to what you were mentioning about ratings in the Malaysia story, that state, networks and reporters and et cetera might start to curb what they say because otherwise they'll be denied access.
Look, if folks are denied access, they'll just be denied access. I don't think most outlets will compromise the journalistic ethics and integrity in exchange for access. I just don't. I don't think his tactic of bringing in the network chiefs and some of the major anchors of the networks and then berating them in front of their colleagues works for him. I don't think that was a good tactic because it compels these network chiefs, it compels these anchors to go and be accurate. There's only one way to combat a bully, and that's to fight back. If you let the bully you into submission, he's going to continue bullying you. And I think the press clearly understands that. So I think you're going to find partisan press on both sides. On the one hand, you're going to find partisan press that will criticize and attack every single thing he does. Will criticize him for appointing rich people to his cabinet. I'm glad he's appointing rich people. Maybe they won't steal. I think you will, on the other hand, you will find press who will justify and defend and applaud absolutely everything he does. Naming a, white supremacist, anti-Semite, somebody that's perceived as that, will be applauded and justified. But then I think you're going to still find legitimate, credible outlets, print, radio, media, TV, that will try to be fair and balanced. And I think that if you're worried about that, what you should do is, if you're not already, subscribe to some of those outlets that you think are providing the most fair and balanced and strengthen them that way. One of the problems we have is that traditional newspapers, some of the bastions of journalistic ethics, are having a really hard economic time. People aren't reading newspapers. They're not watching TV. These damn millennials, they like to watch stuff in little things. Drives me crazy. You guys need to watch TV. It's not good to be watching little things.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm curious if you would speak a little bit or give your inside view on Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon and how you think that whole scene might play out in the White House.
Well, look, I know this is going to come as a shock and surprise to you, but I don't hang out with Steve Bannon. It is funny because, he's perceived as a white supremacist. He's perceived as an anti-Semite, but he made millions and millions of Seinfeld. He was an early investor in Seinfeld. So really, he should be like a Zionist. Reince, I do know. Reince, I do like. Reince, I kind of feel about Reince the same way I do about Mitt Romney. It's being White House staff is really tough. It's rough. It's long hours. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of work. I'm grateful that Reince, who I consider to be a level-headed person who is able to work with different factions. Remember, Reince was the guy behind the postmortem of the Republican Party in 2012. He's the guy that wanted to build a more inclusive umbrella. So, I'm glad that he is there. I'd rather he be there than two Steve Bannons. I'd rather it be two Reinces. But if I can't get two Reinces, I'd rather it be one Reince and one Steve Bannon than two Steve Bannons. So I think Reince, I know Reince is smart, cares about his country, is inclusive, is a decent man, is a principled person, has good relationships and maintains and works and respects relationships with all types of Republicans. And, I hope he can be a positive influence there.
Thank you.
Steve Bannon, I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to get audited, waterboarded, and deported.
Herb Horowitz from the Princeton community. I have a son who just moved to Miami, but he's only on the 4th floor, so I think he's a little more concerned than...
Where does he live in Miami?
6th floor,
Where does he live in Miami?
Bay Harbor Island.
Oh, yeah, he's gone.
What I wanted to ask you, we haven't talked about, there's all the speculation on divesting of his business interest or separating his business interest from the presidency. And I know he came out with a tweet today that said he's going to keep it separate, which I don't know how you can do that and take the name Trump off every one of his 500 ventures around the world. And we're already seeing examples of conflicts where the ambassador from the Philippines to the U.S. is his business partner on the big hotel he's trying to build. And foreign governments are already making sure they book reservations at the Trump hotel. I mean, I don't know how you separate this stuff, even if he wants to, and he doesn't seem to want to very much other than to hand it over to the children. How do you see that playing out? Because I think this could be the worst problem of his administration.
Well, you know, if he doesn't, I agree with you that it's because of the nature of his business, it's going to be very, very difficult. And there's a lot of overlap, and there's some things that he probably won't do, but some of the more egregious things, you know, I hope he addresses. Things like maybe his children who are running the businesses should not be sitting in on meetings with foreign leaders of countries where they have properties. Maybe his daughter should not be hawking a $10,000 bracelet on a 60-minute interview. You know, or a $99 bracelet either. You know, maybe they shouldn't be, you know, asking foreign delegations, so where'd you stay last night? How were the beds? You know, look, I think there's things that he can do, and there's things that are going to be more difficult for him to do. And I do think that the Republican Congress needs to be really vigilant about this, because for the last 2 years, Republicans have had tremendous scrutiny over the Clintons and their conflicts of interest. I've been very critical of the Clintons and their conflicts of interest. And I know Bill Clinton. I like Bill Clinton, but I can tell you that I was very bothered by the conflicts of interest. Republicans will be faced with the charge of hypocrisy if they are not as tough and they're not as vigilant with Donald Trump, if they look the other way and let him get away with conflicts when they have honed in on Clinton and with that for the last 2 years. If they hadn't, right? If they hadn't spent the last 2 years investigating and charging and doing this and doing that on her legitimate conflicts of interest, maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal. But at this point, if they're not consistent with Trump on that, they have egg on their face, and I think it's going to be something that can now, the shoe go on the other foot. Democrats can turn it into a constant hammer and bring it down, you know, over and over again, drip, 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 against Republicans and against Trump if they don't adhere to trying to curb these conflicts of interest.
Do you think Democrats will work with Republicans on issues like that?
On things like the conflicts of interest, I think that Democrats are going to beat the hell out of Republicans. If you know, remember, Republicans are the ones that have the chairmanships of the investigative committees, right? So, you know, if I were a Democrat congressman, I would be putting enormous pressure. The last 3 weeks, we have seen already, you know, half a dozen that we know of instances of conflicts of interest and things that should bother us. And so if I were a Democrat, I'd be watching out for every single instance. I'd be making hay of every single instance. I would be demanding investigations of every single instance. I would be hammering Republicans if they don't do so at every single instance. And I think, you know, the same way that the email thing was a constant drip, 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 in the same way the email thing was so hurtful to Hillary Clinton, I think this conflict of interest issue, if he doesn't address it in an effective way, can be the same thing for Donald Trump. It can be something that dogs him the entire time, particularly because he himself made such an issue about corruption and Clinton ties and Clinton special access and, you know, Clinton privileges. So, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on him to do the same. And I think media has been doing a fairly good job on exposing some of that stuff. Of course, then, you know, he tweets against Hamilton or Kinky Boots or whatever, and we get distracted.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming out in this monsoon. It was fun, and I appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you.
You'll be one El Salvador and Ecuador.
Oh, you did?
Can I get a picture for the Princeton TV Hall of Fame?
For the what now?
Princeton TV Hall of Fame.
I have a message from her home that needs to deliver to her.
Okay, really quick though, because I gotta get her to our next.
It's very
meeting,
quick.
okay?
It'll take only a minute.
Thank you, Jeff.
Gallo. Te pregunta del gigante. Dos cosas. Nicaragua está super proud of. No, pero te lo digo. ¿En qué momento se mete para hablar de
Oh yeah, I was gonna do it for him because he wanted to.
Okay, so we gotta.
We're waiting. Of course.
Can we go?
Are you sure? Because it's going to take a long time. No, it's actually pretty fun.
Oh, hell no.
I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Hey, how's it going? I'm doing great, especially like moments like this.
Oh, good for you. Okay.
I will be. It's crazy. We're doing well. Healthy. That's, as long as they're healthy.
So my boyfriend was coming back from
All right, have a good one, guys.
Pick him up. The flight was like, that happened pretty late. It was like at 11 o'clock or something at night. He was coming back from Panama. And I had said to them, before any of this happened, I had said to them, I have a hard out at whatever, 11:30. And then, you know, after I said, guys, I have a hard out. I'm leaving because, you know, I'm going home. I'm going to go pick up Al. So that's what happened. But I was on TV. I mean, I'm on TV like David. No, last night I was here. But I was on the night before.
But when I didn't see you,
No. You know, I will tell you, CNN has never, ever given me any editorial issues. I say whatever I want in any language I want. You know, on the air, they haven't, not at all. They've been very, very supportive. Thank you for coming. This is monsoon.
She's going to take care of
But she defies the label of she is a radical government. You always said it was the one, but so why is she a Democrat? Why is she a why is she a Republican? Now how do you think about something like
Trust me, it always gets fun on that side.
It's going in reverse. Just went in reverse. Big reverse. And the Republicans stand for
Yes. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I saw your name in the email.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm trying to find that email because I have no idea who else is going. But okay.
Are we just supposed to go there by ourselves?
Good question, pal. Instinct. But some people do well with instincts.
Much about that.
I don't think you do well with scary stuff.
Even though we all agree,
I know.
because I get too uptight with that.
Oh, and you know what? Okay, on April Fool's Day, this is funny. I'm on a couple undergraduates. Oh, no,
And do you hear anything? Like if I talk now, do you hear me?